Hey, welcome. So, in the past, we may have found ourselves, those of us who are conscious of being of service, we in any way, when times are hard, when crisis happens, we may have found ourselves having to come out of our center, put aside what's right for us, put ourselves, our lives, and our bodies under duress and under stress, to be there for others, to catch ourselves and others falling over the abyss. And what's healing right now, and what's healing throughout the dimensions of beingness, is reality itself. The nature of the reality we inhabit is changing by degrees through the downstepping dimensions. And here we are in the reset of consciousness happening in the physical sets of dimensions, this reset moving through the physical sets of dimensions where we shift from experiencing ourselves as isolated units in separation, banging about in the dark, to resonating cells within a cohesive body of interconnectedness. That recognition of oneness, of wholeness that comes from feeling oneness, and that interconnectedness that we are breathing with all of life, that life breathes us as we breathe life. That recognition becoming ever more physical now as it does so. And this is a collective evolution, the moving point of now in the story of our collective evolution. As that resonantial experience of oneness vibrates in the body consciousness fields ever more deeply through degrees of density always coming in now, it brings up so much to the surface. It brings up the memory of not being in a state of interconnectedness, the memory of not being in oneness, and that the traumas that are still stored in our body consciousness, in our fields, that have yet to vibrate their way out of the system. Some of those traumas are so hidden, are so buried, are so deep. The traumas that we have either inherited through our familial lineage, brought in with us through our spiritual lineage, that have happened in other lives and in lives in other dimensions, but nonetheless existent still within our DNA as patterns and stories informing the whole of who we are, that reality is this way. Reality is going to keep recreating these traumas, the traumas that come from being in a disconnected state. I'm using the word trauma very broadly here to reference all of the experiences a human being can have, or a being can have, that are less than unconditionally loving. We don't release all that all in one go. The system would not be able to do that. We always release what's kind and harmonious itself, because the process of evolution, when it's the process of homecoming, as this collective story is, the process of evolution is the process itself has harmony. So as the resetting consciousness moves through the physical dimensions of the body consciousness we're having more deeply embodied realizations of oneness. It's more physically felt. It means we're not thinking this, we're feeling it, we're vibrating it. The body is vibrating with the resonance of harmony, of oneness. And that is what's available in the collective field as we move through these gateways. And every new moon and every full moon is a gateway that brings yet a new resonance of wholeness in the ever-moving story of our collective evolution. As we move through these gateways, and a new resonantial vibration of wholeness is available, is held in the collective field, and we are picking up on this. We can notice ourselves going through having shared experiences, going through this journey together and looking to each other and going, wow, what just happened? What happened for you during that? You know, we're aware that we're receiving. and we are moving together as one, even though we're all having our unique stories, even though it seems like, well, half the world is doing this, another half of the world is doing that. We're more than 7 billion unique individuations having unique stories. There are still themes that we can identify when we look to what's being reflected back to us, not just within our own experience, but the experiences of others. So the themes this last that opened with a new moon gateway that was leading up to the culmination of this full moon gateway in the autumn equinox was a reset in how we are showing up to be of service. And I say being, but what I mean is doing in service, very much the Shiva part, the active part of how we show up in service. And there was, in the trajectory of our own evolution, there was say we've been on an outward journey. We've gone on an outward journey. We've reached the apex of that outward journey. We're coming home. There is a point now which corresponds to 22 years ago where we are picking up pieces that are unfinished traumas from 22 years ago related to what we put ourselves and our bodies through when there's crisis, when we're here to help, when things go difficult. What do we do? And do we come out of our center to help, to be of service, to show up in support of others? So there's been a healing and clearing and an almost revisiting of the past from, although I say 22 years ago, that point in us 22 years ago can connect to actually quite a lot of years, a package of years around that, the movements we were in at that time. But that's the point we're picking up the pieces from and allowing this old way of, I must come out of my center. Being of service means putting my needs and my bodily needs and what's right for me to one side, and just overstretching myself so that I can help others. And that's what's been, the memories of that have been stored in our body are what's being dissolved. They're what's leaving, but they're being lovingly dissolved. So just to take a moment to let those words settle in, this moment in this part of the equinox gateway is for the pause. It's for, I love the way Jiva said this, it's like when you throw a ball up high, straight up into the air. There's a moment before that ball comes back down where it's at the apex of its trajectory, and it's almost like it's pausing, and it's like we're there. The equinox is the apex of a trajectory. This is the moment of pause. The new moon brought a lot of very difficult and challenging circumstances with it to get these old vibrations moving in our systems and to get us looking at what was showing up in our lives and really feeling into where are we? No, I cannot do this anymore, or I cannot do this in this way anymore. And I'm not prepared to put my body through this. I'm not prepared to come out of my center and put myself through this anymore. And to gather those no's, because going through a gateway is like going through a doorway with a rucksack on our backs. If that rucksack is like the baggage we carry from our past, the gateway is going to, on the other side of that doorway, there are new frequencies available for us. And it's like we can't go through that doorway while we're carrying that big rucksack of old baggage. This particular gateway, it's been a very big rucksack. And it's really physically focused. So it's been bringing up a lot of things that have felt, there's been a lot of crisis energy around. There's been a lot of, pressure, physical pressure, real life, physical pressure. And just because it's real life and just because it's physical, of course, it's no less in the domain of consciousness and awareness than anything else. So we've done all that work. We've been in this month where we've had all this time to be responding naturally, authentically, feeling what's not okay, making those choices. And on the other side of this gateway, what we get to relax into is that being of service means showing up as the truth of who we are, doing what we enjoy. And it can be fun, it can be enjoyable, but most importantly, it can keep us, we can stay aligned with the truth of who we are, and we can stay centered. We don't need to push ourselves off our center. We don't need to become, a gyroscope. We stay centered. We don't need to overstretch. And there's been an emphasis, and a lot of us have been feeling really pushed to, and pressured almost, to sort of see, well, no, I'm not there for that. And I'm not there for that. This has become, I'm not there for them or that person. I can't show up for that person in this way. And the lovely phrase I think that Lee brought was cutting the wheat from the chaff. And that doesn't mean cutting people away. It means, what am I here to show up? What are the ways I am going to show up for, that I'm energized for? And what are the ways I'm not? And that's a clue. It's like, what am I energized for? And if my energy is failing and my body is suffering because of the way I'm doing what I think I need to do, there's a clue there of there's something internal to let go of, to face and say, God, I'm really invested in the fact that I need to do this. This comes from trauma, or this comes from the past. And that is wanting to leave my system. There has been a really beautiful, so going into the energy alchemy just a bit, there's been a really beautiful Shiva energy reset from the crown. The blue light from the crown, finding new pathways, finding its natural pathways, its natural alchemical pathways through the system to bring in that energetic support, that Shiva support, into the, the physical energy system. That can make sense. To actually physically energize us to take the actions that we are aligned with. This last moon cycle has been very much, the theme has been like, we're all veterans. Like there's a whole, all of humanity are like veterans. That are coming, that are kind of healing, that are in a healing process, that are letting go of the crises they've been carrying in their fields. So there's been a real emphasis on caring for ourselves, strengthening our borders. When we feel no towards a certain person or a certain thing or a certain action, to check where we feel guilty about that and work on the guilt, not overcome the guilt, work on the guilt. And ask, why do I feel guilty? What needs healing in me? So that we don't feel guilty about honoring ourselves. We don't feel guilty about saying, this is okay for me, that isn't. Because on the other side of the no is the yes. On the other side of the no is, oh, but I can show up like this. I am energized for this. And that's where the clue is again. Where we feel energized, that's what we're actually being asked and encouraged and supported to show up as, to do, to take action in those areas. So we're being supported to take action where we feel energized. The sacred center, the kind of gateway to source, has been open in the human blueprint. This equinox has been the high heart. And there's a big story around the relationship between the high heart and the heart center, and how they're on a pathway for becoming one center. But the connecting to oneness and opening and connect through this center, through this high heart center, has been supported through this gateway. I would say more about this and actually go in meditation and in other places. I just want to touch on that briefly now. The energy alchemy has been really beautiful, very interesting. There's been a lot of control energetics that have been dissolving in the new inflow of energy from the crown. This beautiful light blue finding its way to energize us into action. There's been a lot of control energetics that have been releasing from the pelvic area, the feet, the crown, and the neck and shoulders. And those control energetics, when I speak to that, I mean those constrictions in our energy field that put a block on divine energies entering our physical energy system, to supporting us physically. So some of the blocks around allowing divine energy to support us physically have been dissolving. So if you're feeling really strong physical symptoms, the suggestion I would make is to welcome them, witness them, allow them, and meet them with loving compassion, knowing that you are in and they are in a process of dissolution, death, surrender, and rebirth and renewal. That the energy that was tied up in those constrictive energy patterns, blocking those divine flows, that's being released, being surrendered to oneness, and will rebirth in right alignment, will come back in right flow. What it's like at the moment is that there is a divine flow really increasing how much energy we can physically circulate in our systems. That can push up all kinds. It's almost like when a river flows. When a river that's been dry, the water flows down a river that's been dry, and there's debris in that river blocking the way. And the first flow will put a lot of pressure on that debris, and it will push and push and push and push and push. And it's a bit like that in our energy pathways. When the flow increases or a new flow comes in or new pathways, the energy finds its way around pathways where it hasn't been. The constrictions are like that debris. The flow puts a lot of pressure on them. The beautiful thing is, though that debris doesn't have to go all the way to the end of the channel, you don't have to help it find its way out. The energy that's coming in is the same energy that dissolves those blockages, it dissolves those constrictions. It's got all the qualities that dissolve the constrictions in it. We can help if you're having an intense physical experience at this time. It can really help to bring loving awareness into that, because what you're doing is there's two things in that picture. You've got the flow of energy coming in, and you've got the debris. If you concentrate on the debris, it amplifies your experience of the pressure that debris is under. Whereas if you are concentrating, or you have in your awareness, wow, I'm feeling this because there is a new energy flow coming in. It has the divine qualities that are going to help dissolve this constriction. And you can have any kind of, I'll celebrate the fact there's new energy flowing in. Then you're actually going to have an easier experience. This constriction, the energy constrictions are going to dissolve anyway. But it's like you're aligning your experience with a beautiful divine energy that's flowing in, so that your experience doesn't have to be so sat in the old energy that's leaving. Now, that's easier said than done a lot of the time. But sometimes it's enough just to touch on that awareness, like, oh my God, this really hurts, or something's coming up, just for a nanosecond. And that's enough just to empower that divine frequencies, to kind of remind us that, okay, oh yeah, this is happening because change is happening. And then if we can touch on that divine resonance of celebration, change is happening. We're not trying to celebrate the fact that we're feeling something uncomfortable. And people will call this ascension symptoms. We're not celebrating the suffering here. We're celebrating that change and renewal is happening, and that makes the suffering a lot easier. It brings in way more support and aligns us with a more graceful experience, just to touch that resonance of unconditional celebration. Those unconditional resonances are our gateway home to source. When we can touch unconditionality, we're aligning our human emotions and our human frequencies with our divine resonances, and receiving all the gifts that come from being able to do that. And like I say, it's to do that for just a nanosecond can bring in such gifts and such benefits. We don't have to sit there and go, I'm celebrating this, I really am, when we're not feeling that. We really don't have to lie to ourselves at any point throughout this. So if you are finding it difficult, bringing tenderness and kindness and gentleness to those parts that are hurting, and being the embracing parent to the crying toddler. What do you need? What's the bad thing that's happening? I hear you. Of course it would feel like that. No, that's not okay. All right. okay, and how are you now? You know, and checking in with yourself, just listening with loving compassion to anything that's moving. So what can help at the moment with this is movement, gentle movement, real listening to the body, because the flow of divinity is moving through us physically. And it's the body is speaking to us. The body is letting us know. It's saying, hey, the message is coming here from this dance between the new divine flows, the old divine constrictions leaving. This is what I need. This is what feels good. When you get high voltage flow coming into the system, it can really help to acknowledge that it's almost like a voltage has been increased. You got a higher voltage flowing through the circuitry, and I've got to get that analogy right. I need to talk to an electrician. But basically, like, there's more than the system is used to. So if you can, some at those times, focus on your breathing, ask what needs to stretch. There's going to be a lot of parts of the body that want to expand, that want to open, that don't have those energetic constrictions in place anymore, but they do have a higher energy flow moving through the system, and that's going to feel quite strange in some ways. And one of the ways we can really make that easier is open to moving the body the way it wants to move, listening to the body. Well, where do I need to stretch? Where would it feel good to drop my shoulders, to move my hips, to move my feet and twist my ankles? Do I want to roll those feet around? Do I want to twist those ankles around? Can I stretch my neck very gently, like really being tender? Because again, it's the same thing. If you have an injury that's healed, that part of us is always going to be sore. It's going to be tender. And at the moment, I suggest being like that with our bodies, being tender, being gentle. So to recap, the flow of this equinox has been, there's a big cycle, began with a new moon at the beginning of this moon cycle. That culminated, that was where we found all the things we wanted to let go of and say no to, about how we were going to show up in action, in service when there's crises. This moment, these days, these 3 days, kind of either side of the equinox, well, no, I'm sorry, from the 21st, 22nd, 23rd, are a pause. They're like when you've thrown the ball up and it almost appears like it's pausing before it falls back down. So being in beingness, being gentle, not pushing or forcing, or not physically pushing or forcing or rushing. And then on the other side of that, listening to, it's like, right, well, whole load of maps for who I am and how I show up in service have been dissolved. I've just been in the pause. This is where we have to go into this pause and let go before new maps can come in. We have to go into the mystery. And in the mystery of not knowing what's next, that's the magic that allows the knowingness to come in. Thanks, Jiva, for that real succinct phrase. Is like, yeah, in the mystery of not knowing, that's when knowingness comes in. And as we go forward out of this equinox, there are going to be new maps for how we show up bodily in action and support what's going on, support ourselves by showing up in service when the world is in crisis. So you've been feeling this real need to kind of withdraw and go in and go, well, the world is going nuts, or my friend's world's going nuts, or I can see things going crazy around me, but I actually have to protect my own energy. I have to center, I have to align, I have to stay with what's within the realms of the possible for me, and not just the possible, but the honoring. And in going through this way, on the other side, there is so much support. Those divine flows of energy entering the body are supporting us to energize this human physical self into divine alignment in how it goes into action at times of crisis. And that doesn't mean always rushing to rescue something. So there's way more to come on this, but at the moment I feel like it's important to speak to the mystery, to letting go, and allowing ourselves to be with not knowingness for these few days. And sure, the answers are going to come. You know, we've said no to a lot of things in the last moon cycle. What we're going to say yes to is going to reveal itself when we listen to how we bodily feel, how we physically feel, what's right for us. But it's going to reveal itself on the other side of this gateway, especially if we can let go of not having the answers now. All right. So thank you so much. That was kind of high speed because there's just been so much information to fit into a little energy report there. I'm just going to see if there's anything. I think if there's a channeling from the guides or if there's a transmission, an energy transmission, I'm going to do that as a separate thing. For now, that feels like that's what there is to say now. So here's to the mystery, here's to the pause, and here's to beingness with love. Bye for now.